Cousin! Hey, it's been too long since I last sent you a message. Listen, I know they got you guys working your butts off over there, so I don't want to keep you long. Remember you told me to let you know if I recover any interesting sounds on my expedition? Well, I think I found something that'll get you going ape. A fully intact CD. And not just any CD, mind you. Apparently, this sweet trip artist had a pretty passionate cult following a few centuries ago, back in the early 2000s. I cast my eyeballs around a bunch of archives, though, and it seems like there still might be a couple holes in their discography. I'll get you a copy of this once I find a disc drive, but for now, I'll just shoot you what I got. It's an album called Halica, and an EP called Alura. Let me know what you think.
Sweet Trip was formed around 1993 in San Francisco by Roberto Burgos, aka Robbie, aka The Mushroom, and Viet Lee, with the intention of playing in a talent show which ended up getting cancelled before they could actually perform. A little bit after this, Valerie Cooper joined. They seemed to all vibe with each other heavy because they started touring and, being a band. But it would be 5 years until they would release their first album, Halica, through Darla Records. Halica was a part of Darla's Bliss Out series, which were a bunch of albums by a bunch of artists, all with the general prompt of, quote, create your ambient epic. Do a full length of instrumentals, long, slow, and beautiful, end quote. Halica was the 11th album in this series. Even more context, because who doesn't love some good old context? This album was recorded analog. Robbie has said that the songs on Halica were basically 4-track demos, and I guess Darla just liked him so much that they wanted to put him on a CD. Anyways, for the music itself, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of ambient music, but I've listened to a fair amount and I understand the appeal. For what it is, it's quality. If you're into ambient shoegaze, then you'll probably love Halica. In fact, most people will enjoy Halica. There's so many lovely textures on this thing. My favorite's gotta be Follow Me. I think it has the most presence on the album, but for me, honestly, I'm more likely to choose their later stuff over this. Alura was released about a year and a half later, and it tends to be even more overlooked than Halica. But I think it's actually a pretty important step in the band's progression, and not just because it was their first studio endeavor. This EP is IDM, wowzers. I'd say it's pretty different from Halica, however the 4th track, Kate, is literally a leftover Halica song, so not entirely true. Robbie and Val say that Alura was more influenced by drum and bass and jungle type stuff. Also, it was apparently kind of intended to be played during, raves. I kind of have a hard time believing that ended up happening. That's not to say it isn't danceable, but I don't think Kate would have played well for a club. Maybe Palomar would have, I don't know. But anyways, this was an important step for the band's sound. I mean, IDM appears on everything else they've done to a certain extent. And it's, to me at least, pretty essential to what makes Sweet Trip such an interesting band. Thanks, Alura.
Hey, cuz! Hope you've been hip. Listen, it took me longer than I expected, but I did manage to finally scavenge up a disk drive. And that means this puppy's on the web. I was checking out a few archives, and I'm pretty sure this is the most acclaimed album. But get this, it took people 10 years to actually discover it. Hey, wonder how it's gonna sound after 300, huh? Let me know what you think. By the way, I'm still following up some leads on some more Sweet Trip music. Seems like there might be another album of theirs floating around. I'll get back to you on it, but for now, there's some gravel I gotta agitate, you dig?
After Alura, Viet Lee, a founding member and bassist, left the band, and a few years later, in 2003, Velocity, Design, Comfort was released. Can I just say, every aspect of this album fills me with so much joy, even the external aspects. The cover, just look at it, it's perfect. I was surprised to learn that the building on the cover is real. It's this bizarre apartment complex in Montreal called Habitat 67. designed by Moshe Safdie in 1967 for Expo 67. The whole concept of the building was to reinvent apartments in cities and incorporate, gardens and stuff into it. But you could definitely draw some connections to how VDC sort of blends together glitchy IDM sounds and more pop and shoegaze elements. But the difference between the album and the building is, well, Velocity Design Comfort excels at being all futuristic and utopian, whereas Habitat 67 failed pretty hard. Right off the bat, they squandered the finances, which made the apartments way too expensive for anybody to afford, and it was not very well maintained. So, Virgin Habitat 67 versus the Chad Velocity Design Comfort. Anyways, let's take a look at the track list for a moment. Now, all you weirdos at home might be looking at all those 7+ minute songs and be thinking, oh no, oh geez, oh gosh, I can't handle that, it's scary. And look, I understand that 80-minute albums can be intimidating, but I promise you, it's one of the really, really good 80-minute albums that doesn't just run out of ideas halfway through. In fact, it's quite the opposite. This album is brimming with ideas. I've been listening to it for just about 2 years fairly consistently, and even still, every time I play it, it feels so potent. It's unbelievable. I mentioned the balance between the IDM and the pop on here, and it does fluctuate. Some songs are way more electronic than others. Take, for instance, the very first 2 tracks, which are both pretty great at setting the tone. Tekka, the opener, is super electronic. It goes like beep boop ba boop beep, and then it hits you with disco, and that's like noisy indie electronica. What? Also, by the way, if you're interested in this album, disco's probably the most immediately accessible track on here. It's very catchy. Go listen to it. This might be a bit of a gross metaphor, but it's kinda like a chunky smoothie, you know? Most of it is a wonderful, seamless blend of different flavors, but every once in a while, you just find an entire blueberry in there, and you eat it, and it's wonderful. Another thing, I don't know what exactly Robbie was doing in the 4 years between Alura and VDC, but his production chops went up exponentially. I mean, this was recorded at home on his computer, and it still sounds this intricate. I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but I think Robbie might have, absorbed Richard D. James and just has been impersonating him ever since. But that's just a theory. A sweet trip theory. Thanks for watching. Oh, but we're not done quite yet. The last part I want to touch on is the vocals. Most songs on Halica and Alura were, if not instrumental, then vocals were pretty deep in the mix. Velocity Design Comfort is the first time that they actually got some presence in the music. And it works to humanize the songs, if you know what I mean. They really balance out the artificial, technical elements with organic stuff. That's kind of what makes this whole record work. It's balance. Whether it be the balance between the freaky, scary dance music and drawn-out shoegaze, or the organic and the artificial. Velocity Design Comfort is a utopia.
What's up, guys? Well, took longer than I expected. Had to search 30 different buildings. Almost dropped dead twice, but I didn't want to look like you. Ha! I'm kidding. It's no big deal. But I finally found it. I was able to figure out they released an album around 2009. Besides that, I had jack. I couldn't even find the cover. Finally, though, I found You Will Never Know Why. On a bootleg CD, no less. I kept on trudging through online archives, and it seems like this might be the end of the road for Sweet Trip albums. Although, I'm looking into tracking down some miscellaneous songs and demos and the like. I'll let you know what I find. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this one as much as the last few.
I think a little recap is in order. Sweet Trip debuted with Halica, which was primarily ambient shoegaze. Then they put out the Alura EP, which was IDM. Then VDC, which was IDM and shoegaze, and a bit of pop. And in 2009, 6 years after that, they release You Will Never Know Why, which is primarily pop with a bit of indie rock. It is definitely a new direction for the band. The singing plays a much bigger role here. I don't think I mentioned it before, but both Robbie and Val sing, and that back and forth sort of dynamic adds a lot of charm to the album. The band stated that a lot of these songs were written around the same time as songs on Velocity Design Comfort, which actually surprises me. Most of the songs on VDC have like 3 or 4 lines that are just repeated throughout the entire song, which there's nothing wrong with, mind you. Using vocals more like instruments is great. It's just that You Will Never Know Why is more traditional in its writing. In general, this is by far their most accessible album. If I were to recommend an album to a person who's never heard of Sweet Trip, this would be it. You, listening to this, if you've never heard Sweet Trip, or you were put off by VDC's Beat Boops or something, listen to this one. Now that isn't a negative, I adore this album, but it's good in a different way. Velocity Design Comfort is super unique. I've heard pretty much nothing like it. I've heard some albums like Never Know Why, it's just better than everything else I've heard. That's not to say it doesn't inherit plenty of VDC sound. There's a ton of little glitchy synth flourishes that give the songs a lot of character. The closer, Female Lover, is pretty much entirely IDM. Most of the time though, they toned it down. That does make room for some pretty interesting influences. For example, No Words to Be Found almost sounds like a bossa nova song, To the Moon's pretty jangly, a couple of the songs even have guitar solos. There's also some shoegazy bits, although it varies from song to song. It's probably most prominent on Milk, which is a song about milk that is no longer in the cup. It's left, it's gone. You could even say that it's been spilt, and certain people may be very unhappy about it, despite the fact that there's no way to put the milk back into the cup. As far as I'm concerned, this isn't just the emotional center point of the album, this is the most emotional song in their discography. This song bothers my tear ducts, okay? You know why? 'Cause you will drift away. I want to do Sweet Trip karaoke. Scratch that, I want to join Sweet Trip. Trust me guys, I'm a great vocalist. Anyways, what else can I say? Every time I put on this album, all of the good vibes emanating from it just steal 57 minutes from my day. Where did it go? How did it do that? This music is too good, and if you like good music, I'm sure you'll feel the same.
Guys, greetings and whatnot. Now, I'll come right out and say it. I haven't found another Sweet Trips album. I'm pretty certain that they didn't release another one for at least a decade after that last one. But it doesn't mean this gig is up. I found a bunch of random material from them. Ranges from B-sides they released themselves to tracks they had on compilations. A bunch of stuff. All told, I ended up finding over 2 hours of new stuff from them. Figured you'd want to take a listen. The search isn't quite done yet. I've been hearing rumors they might have reunited sometime around 2020. We'll see where that takes me. Anyways, I attached the songs as per usual. I'm sure you'll get a kick out of them. Talk to you later, guys.
You gotta keep in mind that Sweet Trip's albums, when they were released, never got too much praise. They were pretty obscure, even to the internet. Gradually though, as the years passed, more and more people started to hear about them on websites like 4chan, I know, and Rate Your Music, almost entirely through digital word of mouth. Sweet Trip, specifically Velocity Design Comfort, was gaining a pretty sizable cult following. Now it's not Billboard Top 100 popular or anything, not even Pitchfork popular, but on a few websites, well, they're pretty unavoidable. Backing up a little bit though, considering this rise took years, the band wasn't entirely dormant. A few years after the release of You Will Never Know Why, Robbie posted a song on SoundCloud called Things to Ponder While Falling, with the description, probably the last Sweet Trip song ever. Emphasis on probably there, but hey, this would have made for a fantastic end. It is a great song. It would have gone well with their last record. Some more unreleased material would surface in 2015 with the compilation Seen Unseen. The version on SoundCloud has 10 tracks, but the one I found has 25. And includes pretty much everything they've ever done outside their main releases. Fast forward all the way to 2019, it's been 10 years since the release of You Will Never Know Why, and 16 years since Velocity Design Comfort, and there's finally new Sweet Trip news. I'm not sure how exactly it was announced at first. It seems the initial posts on Instagram are now deleted, but the gist of it was, Sweet Trip is back, baby. Why are they back? Well, a couple reasons actually. One of them was to announce that Velocity Design Comfort is getting a reissue in 2020 on CD and vinyl. Also around this time, they gave a couple interviews. I highly recommend those if you're interested in Sweet Trip. They're great. I got a ton of facts in this video from those interviews. They also reveal the fact that they've begun writing new music. Obviously, that's pretty exciting. Finally, we've come to the year of our Lord 2020, and stuff's really starting to happen. First off, the reissue of VDC happened, and that's epic. I hope they reissue their other stuff soon. More importantly though, in May, a Darla Records compilation was released. It included a brand new Sweet Trip song called In Sound We Found Each Other. Now I can't tell you how close a new album from them is. I hope to God it comes out this year. However, patience is key. That might just be the moral of the story when it comes to Sweet Trip. I have to say, I'm pretty confident it'll pay off. Thanks for watching.